Hello, and welcome to the Dental Marketing Mastery Series. This podcast is brought to you by New Patients Incorporated. I'm Howie Horrocks, the founder of New Patients Incorporated, and along with me once again is my friend and partner and the Chief Executive Officer of New Patients Incorporated, Mark Dilitush. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Dental Marketing Mastery Series podcast. I'm Howie Horrocks here in Las Vegas, and way across the country is our good buddy, the CEO of NPI. That would be Mark Dilitush. How you doing, Mark?
Good, Howie. How are you?
Fine. Roasting.
Is it still raining? And is it raining and flooding in Vegas?
It's raining, not so much flooding anymore. But that was a disaster. That was a disaster for the casinos. Jeez.
I know.
There were money. There's money floating down the strip.
Yeah, it's a hell of a place. All right, so what do we have for our listeners and viewers today? For those of you who haven't followed us for the last, I don't know how many years we've done podcasts, like 8, 10, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But if you're not a regular follower and you just started following us this year, then you're not already aware that we use the month of September every year to help our audience prep for the next year, for the following year's marketing. It's a great time to sit back and measure and assess and analyze, strategize, and put together a real plan for the upcoming year. So that's what all of our September podcasts have been devoted to. There's no reason to change it now. However, 2022's version is going to probably be a combination of 2019, definitely not 2020. 2021, everybody was crazy and overwhelmed with patients. So it's, a little bit of that is still happening, but that's waning. So the 2022 version of how to set up your marketing plan for next year is going to be, a combination of all those things. So when you go to build a marketing plan for your practice, the first part of it is really just math. And what I'm describing to you is actually much of this is the process that we go through. Like a dentist calls us and says, hey, how should I advertise my practice? What I'm describing to you is what we do. It's not a secret. So when you go to plan for 2023, then the first thing you do is you do math. And you say, okay, what are my revenues going to be at the end of 2022? Let's say it's, $800,000. What do I want my revenues to be at the end of 2023? Let's say your answer is $1 million. Okay, you multiply 800,000 times 5%, you multiply 1 million times 5%, and that gives you your budget range on the low end, your budget range on the high end, and that gives you a spending control, right? That's the whole reason you have a budget, is to control spending. It's not to spend, okay?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of dentists out there who are way overspending, right? So you don't want to do that. This is a business, and you can run and grow a dental business almost anywhere in this country for that range, right? Okay. So now you have a budget, and you say, okay, well, what's the next thing we do? Well, here's what we do. Let's say the same doctor calls us, we go through budgeting. They're going to have marketing assets and they're going to have marketing liabilities, right? So if you're going to do this yourself, you look at how many patients am I getting legitimately from I'm going to go into that in a little while, legitimately from my website. How many new patients am I legitimately getting from, let's say, insurance participation? Where are your new patients coming from now? What's working? What's not working? What are you spending money on? Anything you're spending money on should be measured. The impact of that investment in your marketing needs to be measured. And I'll get into that in a little bit later on how to do that. So you do all your measurements and you say, okay, well, and again, I'm just using an example. Let's say our practice is about to do 800,000 in 2022. And last year our budget was 40,000 and we spent 30,000 so far, and we got this much from this spend, this much from this spend, this much from this spend in the form of new patients. Okay. Now you go to those new patients and you look at their production, because there's an amazing difference between how you promote and the revenue that's actually generated. For instance, you could spend $0 and get 100 new patients. Here's how. Get your notebooks ready. You go to Wendy's and take a stack of napkins. You get a black Sharpie and you just write free dentistry on it and you hand it out to 100 people on the street.
There you go.
Poof, 100 new patients. You're an amazing marketer, okay? So I know I'm over exaggerating the point, but the point is that every one of the things that you're spending money on may be generating a whole bunch of shoppers and very little revenue. Some of them you may be spending money on, may be giving you only a few new patients, but those patients are turning into incredible revenues for your practice, right? So you got to kind of drill down. You have to see who responded to your marketing, go to your practice management software, put in the right information in the referral field, run a production by referral source report, boom. There's the minimum you got as far as a return during 2022. Right? And again, we're only 3 quarters into 2022. It could still continue to work, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So you figure out what your budget needs to be for 2023. You assess your marketing assets and liabilities. So one way you assess an asset is it working? We just discussed that. How do you assess a liability? Most of that is common sense, honestly. For instance, if you have 14 Google reviews and your Google review score is 3.8 and you have 100 other dentists in your market that all have over 100 Google reviews and they all have a Google review score of 4.6 or higher, your Google business page is a marketing liability. It's actually a really big one, right? So you have to really be honest with that's what we do, okay? Some people don't like how honest we are because we tell them about their marketing liabilities, right? Say they're like, I don't like this. They told me the truth. And sometimes in not a lot of cases, but some cases, your website is actually a marketing liability, right? Like it doesn't mention doctor. It doesn't bring the doctor forward. Maybe you have gross videos of your last implant, surgery that shouldn't ever be on site. Okay. Maybe your front welcoming page is a video of an operatory. Oh my God, never do that. Right. No. There's things that you may or may not recognize as liabilities, but do your best. Like if you're going to do this yourself, do your best. Be honest. Is this something me, the dentist, likes, or is this something a dental consumer would like? Right. Because we're not trying to attract dentists to your office. We're trying to attract dental consumers to your office. Right. So you look at your liabilities, because you always want to put some budget next year toward your liabilities. Like you don't eventually, if you do this right over a period of years within budget, you won't have any liabilities. But first you have to identify them. You have to be honest and identify them and then apply some of the budget next year to those liabilities. So we have next year's budget. What was it? It was 800,000 to $1 million. So the budget next year is not going to be under 40, not going to be over $50,000, $4,000 a month, around there. So if you have assets, let's say your website, it's fine. Your website provider is a good person. You submit changes requests and they do them for you. And it's not prohibitively expensive. Your website's an asset. As long as you can prove that your website is generating new patients. Now, don't go to your practice management software and just look at the referral report, because here's what happens. Your patients almost always go to your website last. So when they come into your office, your front desk says, hey, how did you find out about us? Every patient says your website. That doesn't mean your website's good. It doesn't mean it's effective. It just means that's the last thing they did, right? Yeah. So there's some data that you have to neglect, right? Because that's just human nature. That's what people do. They could have heard you on the radio, seen you on TV, gotten a piece of mail, saw your Google ad, saw your display ad. They may have seen whatever other marketing that you're doing and eventually ended up coming into your office from those other sources. But when they walk into your office, they're immediately going to say website. I'll get into how to track that in just a second. So assess as best you can where all the new patients are coming from. Another thing you should assess is how many patients were actually referred by other patients, right? In a healthy single doctor practice who has an active marketing campaign on a relatively continual basis, you'll see about 45-50% of the new patients consistently coming through referrals from other patients. And typically, the referral jump a dental practice gets is from your newest patients. Usually the patient that's been with you for 11 or 12 years isn't actively referring, but the most recent newest patient, let's say from last year, who's really pleased now that they found a new dental home, actively refers. There's a threshold of time when referrals happen in greater volumes. Normally, it's within the first 18 months of a patient's existence in a dental practice. Anyway, so measure how many patients you're getting from referral. That should be easy. Your team asks the patient, where did you come hear about us? And the patient says, oh, Mary Smith is a patient of yours. She referred me. I work with Mary. Okay, fine. Mary Smith. And just go into your, again, production by referral source. Take a look. Then, okay, that's getting everything set up. That's kind of a 1,000-foot elevation of how we do what we do. The next piece of this is capacity. Because you shouldn't really put a whole lot of marketing dollars on the street if patients can't get into your office within 8 work days. New patients, primetime appointments, first in the morning, last appointment in the afternoon, on the days that you work. If you can't get them in one of those slots within the next 8 work days, whatever you're spending within that budget is going to have a declining result. Okay, because they're not going to wait. They do not wait. They make appointments. They get off the phone with your team. They think about it. Why am I waiting so long? All I did was go to his Google page and find him on a map. He was just B.
Yeah.
I looked at his reviews. I looked at his review score, and I called the office. Like, I don't know anything about this guy, and I can't see him for 12 days. I want my teeth cleaned like next week. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Ed on the Google map, check his reviews, and call him. I'm going to make that or her make that appointment, keep that appointment, and I'm going to blow off your appointment. And all of a sudden, the dental offices start to see we're getting new patient no-shows. And then they go on Dental Town or they go on a Facebook forum and they go, are you guys getting more new patient no-shows? And the answer is probably not, because they're controlling the capacity of their practice. So now I'm going to tell you about how to do that.
Yeah.
I wrote a whole guide.
One thing, Mark, the patient who does that will almost never cancel. They won't call back and say, well, I'm going to go somewhere else. They'll just
No.
leave that on your books.
Call. Right. They just never call. No, you're absolutely right, Hal. So they never call. So then you're surprised. Oh my God, a new patient canceled. Well, that's why they're canceled. Right? So now how do we stop that from happening? Here's what I want you to do. Write this down. I want you to go back 12 months and give me a total new patient number from 2020. Well, go back 9 months, January 1st through September 30th, 2022. And I want you to give me a total new patient number. Let's say it's 270. And then I want you to divide it by 9 months. That comes 30. That means you're averaging about 30 new patients a month. Then I need you to go into your schedule and I need you to paint 30 prime time, at least 30 prime time openings in your schedule from this point moving forward forever. Okay. And not only 30, I want you to add 20%. So I want you to paint 36 prime time openings and I want you to reserve them in your schedule from this point forward. Okay. Until you add a dentist or whatever. Okay. Until you add some capacity somewhere. That's what we're going to do. Why do we do that? To avoid the exact situation I was just talking about, spending marketing dollars and having them not come in because you can't see them in a certain period of time. What exacerbates the problem? You and your team pre-appointing everyone under the sun when we all know at least 30 or 40% of your patients should never be pre-appointed because we know they're not going to make their next appointment even when we make the appointment. Go to your front desk right now and ask them, tell them to look at your schedule next Tuesday and ask them, look at the people who are coming in here. Can you tell me who's going to cancel? And everybody at the front desk is going to have an opinion. And I bet you it happens. But you're pre-appointing them. So you're automatically filling slots that new patients could take. You see what I'm saying? Right? They're artificially filled. And that creates a whole bunch of work. If you want guidance on how to avoid all this stuff and change the whole business system around, I wrote a guide. It's on npieducation.com. I think it's called 4 Steps to Regrowing Any Dental Practice. It's all about pre-appointing, stop pre-appointing everybody, painting enough spots in your schedule so that the new patient growth can come through. So let's review. We did the math. We figured out the budget. We looked at our assets and our liabilities. Now we're looking at capacity, and we're templating our schedule so that when we do put this budget on the street, it has enough room to breathe. It has enough room to grow. So in other words, instead of 30 new patients a month next year, maybe you average 36. Boo-hoo, right? That would be awesome. That's a 20% increase in your new patient flow. That's great, right? But it's only going to happen if you do all these things. So here's where September 2022 gets different. There's 2 main reasons why it's different this year. One, many of you are still feeling overwhelmed with patient flow due to 2 primary causes right now, September 2022. Many of you are feeling this. The first cause is that the COVID people who were the most scared to go to a dental office are still seeing dentists. They're just coming around to making their appointments, okay? And there's a lot of them. So you're still seeing them, even though it's waning and it's on a trajectory like this. September last year, the trajectory was like this. Now it's getting less and less and less. So you're seeing fewer and fewer and fewer of the most scared COVID type patients, September 2022. Those are going to die off. And concurrently incoming is a recession. Now, I never get political. I never get religious, okay, on these podcasts. Before this year, the definition of a recession was 2 quarters of negative growth in our economy. We've now had 2 quarters of negative growth in our economy. We can argue about semantics of whether or not we're in a recession or not, but by definition, we are in a recession. So, Howie, we've been through 2 of these so far with our clients. We know exactly how to walk them through this, okay?
Yeah.
But for all of you who are doing this yourself, you're going to have to change the messaging on all of your advertising in a recession. It has to go from Invisalign, dental implants, expensive stuff, cosmetics, all the stuff you love to do and want to brag about. And we don't blame you. Howie and I don't blame you at all, okay? But you have to stop doing those things, and your messaging has to return to the core staples of what mom wants to hear from during a recession. Mom is scared, rightfully or wrongfully. It's a perception. This is not, again, when you hear the news as a dentist of a looming recession, you might not even realize what you do, but subconsciously, your brain temporarily at least shuts off spending. It just does, okay? Mom is no different than you. If you're the head of the household, she's the head of the household who makes healthcare decisions for her family. You guys are the same. There's no difference, okay? So temporarily, what's going to happen is, as those last COVID patients get treated, as the recession hits, there's going to be this emptiness, okay? And the money's going to stop. A lot of people got a lot of money during COVID. It's been 2.5 years now, right? A lot of that money is spent. The money's going to stop, and mom's going to get nervous about spending money. So if I'm a dentist and I'm setting up my 2023 campaign, my messaging and the way I deliver my messages is going to be almost completely different than during a non-recession time. Howie, you remember 2004 to 2006? Yeah. Every dentist in the country became a cosmetic dentist overnight.
Right? Absolutely.
Yeah, they're doing $40,000 cases, $50,000 cases. They had them lined up down the street. And then when 2007 hit, it was a ghost town. It was like crickets. right?
Right.
And
Right.
it's the dentist that kept advertising for those cosmetic cases died.
Yeah.
They,
It
I don't
sure
even know
did.
if they practiced, right? We moved every single one of some of them actually were really pissed off that they had to do this. We moved all of our clients back into the core staples of dentistry,
Right.
in our advertising, in our messaging. I mean, you have to. This isn't a choice. You have to do this in 2023 for as long as the recession lasts. There's a consumer confidence index that you can watch on a quarterly basis. And if it's going down, that's the more core staple messaging you have to be. If it's going up, okay, maybe you can introduce a few more niches into your advertising marketing mix, right? And the same thing has to happen on your website. You don't build a website and just go, oh, my website's done. And then when you retire, your website has to morph. It has to morph and evolve with the consumer during recessionary times and during times when the US is growing. So anyway, because of COVID and because of the existing looming recession, this version of how to set up your next year's campaign this September 2022 is vastly different than every other one we've ever done during September, on any September, because we never went through until now, right? We did go through a recession back in 2000. It's actually the worst one in history, well, since the Great Depression. And our advice worked. It actually grew dental practices while the industry was shrinking 18%. So what we're telling you is tried and true. There's hundreds of dentists as examples. So if you follow these steps, if you realize what's coming, if you understand that, like right now, if you're busy as heck, I don't know when it's going to happen in your area, but eventually you're going to run out of those last most nervous COVID patients who waited a year or two to go back to the dental office. You're going to run out of them. And pretty soon you're going to have to go after new patients externally, which brings us to insurance transitions. There's one way to go after new patients externally is to sign up with a bunch of insurances. Well, concurrent with the recession and concurrent with all the expenses with COVID, what did all the insurance plans do to you? They said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to drop reimbursements, right? So now we have this flood of dentists coming in going, you know what? I want to advertise through a fee-for-service transition. I may not get rid of all my plans, but I'm going to get rid of these 3 or these 4 or however many. It's different for each dental practice. So to support that, we brought in 17, 18 of our friends who are experts in their niche in dentistry. You'll recognize almost all the names. And we created this thing called NPI Education, where if you are planning out your 2023 marketing and you are considering dropping a plan or two, you go run into NPI Education, you make an account, it's free, it doesn't cost anything. And my team will see it, make you a pro level member, go right into the fee-for-service courses. NPI Education is this big business education portal, but specifically what I'm talking about right now is a series of courses called fee-for-service journey courses. So sign up for, or just take the intro course to see if you should begin a transition. Right now, we've got, lots of dentists in there who are sharing data with us. We're going back and forth with them. Most of them should begin some form of a transition. Here's my point. We've never done a prep for next year podcast after almost every insurance plan in the country sent, hey, we're going to lower your reimbursement letters to all of our dentists, right? So me and 17 or 18 other dental professionals are kind of taking this personally, and we're donating our time, energy, expertise into those courses, and they're free. You can take them at your leisure. They're taped, so you can take them whenever you want.
Listen to it,
you can go back to them, right? And then there's a little community forming, right? And in that community are other dentists who are also going through their own fee-for-service transitions currently. What we hope to do with that is build this big wave, right, of dentists who come out and tell other dentists, you can do this. This is doable. there isn't as much to be scared of as you think there is if you do it in a measured, methodical fashion.
Yeah,
anyway,
has to be
we're
controlled.
running. Right. We're running up against the clock here. This is already about 8 minutes too long. 2023 planning is different. It has to be. It needs to be different than anything you've ever done when it comes to planning out your marketing. So if you're doing it yourself, watch this podcast, rewatch this podcast, or go into NPI Education, make an account, start reading the guide on transitioning away from, pre-appointing everybody under the sun. I mean, start your homework now so that you can get what you want out of your practice in 2023.
Yeah. Well,
got anything to add, Howie?
No, that covers it a lot right there. So we thank you all out there in podcast land, and we hope to have you in again soon. All right. Bye now.
We hope you've enjoyed our podcast today. You can get all of our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, and Libsyn.com, and on our website, newpatientsinc.com.